So we are waiting for Amine.
Yes.
Okay, welcome. And are you expecting other attendees, Rafael?
Well, not sure who is going to come in. A lot of my parents, they were afraid of doing something technically wrong and messing the presentation. So my father here is transmitting this through YouTube. So some of my parents are going to see it over there.
Okay, good. So we will wait a few minutes for Amine.
Yes, we have Amine. I think we can start.
Yeah, okay, good. I just made you a presenter, Rafael. Are you prepared to share your screen for your presentation?
Yes, it's everything that's right there.
Okay, good. So, Caroline is your partner, Rafael?
Yes, she's my wife.
Oh, your wife. Okay, welcome, Caroline.
Hi, Ho. Nice to meet you, Professor Ho.
Yes. And the other attendees, is that also family?
They're colleagues and friends from here. We met at TU Delft.
Okay, good. So welcome to all of you. And it's a little bit also an event that is online. Yes. Hi, Henrik. There.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, Amine. Okay, then we are ready to start. Okay, so first, welcome Rafael and welcome friends and family to this defense of the master thesis.
Thank you.
A few remarks on the order. So I would like you all to switch off your audio during the presentation. Rafael will share the screen so we can see the presentation on the screen here. The presentation will be about 20-25 minutes, Rafael?
Yeah, about 25 minutes.
Okay, good. After that, the committee members will have the opportunity to ask questions, and after that, the audience might also ask questions. The committee members are Sina Eslamzadeh as an advisor, Amine Gobani as the first supervisor, Amine Sina, and I'm Rolf Kuhneke. I am the second supervisor and have the honor to chair this committee. Okay, if everything is clear, Rafael, to you, let's start. Okay, good. So please share your screen.
Share my screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Not yet. It's yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. So please go ahead.
Yes. All right. So welcome everyone. Welcome to my master thesis presentation on financial incentives for the development of industrial energy community systems. As already presented by Professor Rolf, I have Amine as my first supervisor, Professor Rolf as the chair of the session and my second supervisor, and Sina as my advisor. So the motivation behind this thesis started with industries, as they are a major contributor to economic development, while largely dependent on their energy availability. Such availability is based on fossil fuels, which are depletable and imposes environmental risks. An alternative to fossil fuels, it's the renewable energy generation. But the feasibility of new energy projects, it's becoming a major concern. Energy communities, they are able to promote such feasibility on better scenarios, but also financial incentive mechanisms can increase the feasibility. This leads to the hypothesis of this research that the application of financial incentives to industrial energy communities enhances energy production. Therefore, this research goal is to propose a model to evaluate how incentives can promote the generation of renewable energy through energy communities with industries as members. And finally, the research question becomes of which type of financial mechanisms and incentivize industrial energy communities to enhance their energy production. This is followed by some questions. What is the definition of a community energy system for industries? Which of potential financial incentives can be applied to industrial energy communities? How industries make decisions? And how does the interaction between industries influence their decision process to join community projects? And finally, what predefined metrics can be used to compare different financial incentives? From all this, research approach was built, based focusing on the literature review that inputted into designing a model, which was applied to agent-based modeling using Mesa and Python, and the data output data was analyzed to generate results. So, given a bit of background on what situation we have today, we have that the industrial sector is the largest consumer of energy globally, but only 14% of it comes from renewable sources, where 7% are biomass and the other 7% come from electricity produced by renewable sources. Energy communities, as we know, they embrace decentralized generation. Basically, briefly explaining, it's basically putting over the distribution of energy throughout the city into closer to where it's going to consume, avoiding to build large infrastructure to produce more energy. This adds flexibility and reduces transmission costs. But also energy communities, they gather actors in cooperation. Focusing onto industrial energy communities, we have that they are still scarce, with very few examples in the world, and they are focused on the exchange of physical resources and not so much in the management of the actors. Therefore, looking over to the theories behind it and which theories could enhance the development of the model, we have that the institutional analysis and development framework developed by Elinor Ostrom. It's the main theoretical framework of this research. It provides a basic structure on how actors interact in a group and which elements are there to influence such interaction. But two elements are the ones with most focus on this research. The rules in use, which are the financial incentives, and the action arena, where the actors actually make the interactions by themselves. Because we're talking about actors, game theory is a complement to the IND framework, as it studies how such actors interact. Industries, they can be seen as actors composed of actors. Then looking forward into game theory and composed actors, we have that composed actors, they have a decision style and they have a decision rule. Both of these are studied in Sharpe's decision style framework. But also from game theory, two cooperation games are being explored. One is the Battle of the Sexes. It's a cooperation game where both parties decide not to cooperate. They both have losses. They both have bad results. And the endurance game, which is a collaboration game that if the parties decide to collaborate, the outcome is much more positive than if they decided to do it on their own. As we're discussing on choices and cooperation, the decision processes and how companies make their choices and the companies around it also came across to be studied. So interactions that happen within the action arena, they are based on their decisions. And companies' decision process is a bit different than household decision processes. Companies, they consider a very large set of variables, and they are influenced by its peers, the other companies around it, forming what can be seen as a big puzzle on how to fit everything together to get the best outcome. Those peers, they also form a small world network. Basically, there are connections between those peers. They know each other, they interact with each other, and so the connections between such nodes exist, and so some nodes are different connections depending on how close they're forming a strong network of the peers that are closer, and a weak network of the peers that are more acquaintances than actually some sort of friends. And we are discussing on how how actors act together and how they interact together, cultural element emerges. As communities naturally build up attributes and regulations, the IND framework perceives those attributes of community and those in use. So here it was study Hofstede's organizational theory, which has 6 dimensions. It assesses how a culture is developed. Such dimensions, they can be split into a 2-element decision-making preferences, which is a decision-making style and the decision-making rule, connecting these to sharps. So those are the elements on each axis of the framework, making over the general model for how the companies make their decision. And finally, since we're discussing on financial incentives, this research looked over into the types of financial incentives that were most used for renewable energy generation. We have feed-in tariff as the most used one, that follows a pay-as-you-go scheme where the government pays as the energy is produced. And this increases the benefit to the community on every period, since every period more energy is produced, more money is expensed by the government, more revenue generated to the community. Tax incentives is the second one. It's a pay now, receive later scheme where the government renounces tax collection at the beginning of the project, which decreases the cost of the community at inception. So it has this little difference on the timing of where the expense is made. And lastly, we have tradable green certificates, which is use now, pay later scheme, where the government issues a bond-like certificate that is going to be only expensed by the government at maturity. This increases the benefit of the community as it produces a certain level of energy on its issue. And this issue, as the name says, it's tradable. So it can be exchanged on the market, possibly generating new revenue. And finally, these financial incentives, they need to be compared. And it was chosen the CBA analysis for this calculation, which utilized 3 techniques. Net present value, basically bringing all the project expenses and revenues to the present value. Profit margin, basically calculating revenue minus cost divided by revenue. And the lowest cost of energy, despite the big formula, basically states what were all the costs applied here in this project and what was the benefit generated, divided one by the other. So finally, into the model development. This is a design of idealized action arena that was applied to this research. Here we have three actors interacting between each other. We first have the industries. And the industries, they have their internal decision process, which is based on their decision style and their decision rule. These industries, they are within a community, and within the community, they are making the management of such community in following the battle of the sexes game. So basically, they are trying to cooperate. If they are not able to cooperate, the community fails. And lastly, we have the government, which on this model has a beholder position. So it plays the assurance game with the communities as it set out the rules. So this interaction setting out the rules, if the community follow the interactions and follow the rules and the rules are beneficial, they increase the benefit for both parties. Going quickly into the storytelling within the model, industries, they are deciding on how to supply their energy demand. They can either buy it from the grid, implement renewable energy by themselves, or join a community. And they resort to CBA calculation and a strong peer network as a degree to understand how their network understands and perceives joining a community. The community itself follows a strategy either to produce more energy to its members or to pay dividend by selling this energy to the grid. It develops new energy projects on every period based on the demand of their members. And such new projects are voted by the members if they are feasible or not feasible, if they're going to be created or not. And finally, the government as a beholder, it implements financial incentives and monitors how the industries and the communities are performing. So looking over into the routine and the process applied on each phase, on each actor, on each phase. So industries, when they're deciding what to do, this is a very big and long process, but basically it's to answer 3 questions. If buying energy from the grid, it's more expensive than producing renewable energy by myself, if it is better to produce it by myself or sell it to the grid, or if it is if in the community, it's financially more attractive than doing that on my own. So having these answers, community might want to join, my industry might want to join a community, and if it does, it follows the community member rule. Here, it also a large process, but basically for questions. Do I feel part of this community? This community needs financial assistance for myself. Are my financial needs being fulfilled? And if my needs are not satisfied, should I leave the community or not? Then looking over to the community routine. It's a process, but basically it's answering one question. How can I supply my members' demand? A little note, it's over for this policy entrepreneur role. This policy entrepreneur role comes from Kingdom's theory on policy development. Basically, is a signal to the government if my results are of this period are better or worse than the results of my previous period. So going into the model simulation itself, to model to simulate this model, it was chosen to be a data-driven model. And being a data-driven model, some real-life examples are needed to design everything. So this model was applied to socioeconomic different countries. The selected countries were based on their socioeconomic aspects, but also on their cultural aspects. And they were Australia, Brazil, Iran, Japan, the Netherlands, and USA. But to avoid a direct comparison to real-life projects, as it's not the goal to develop a very precise real-life simulation, all data was transferred in countries, which are alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, and zeta, one aligning to the other. And also, looking over to the cultural aspect, we got the data from Hofstede's 6 cultural dimensions for the countries. So all the countries have differences on their cultural aspects, on their social aspects and economic aspects. This was translated into the fictional countries, and they received a distribution, a normalized distribution of the decision style and the decision rule for each industry. So each industry received a value based on the normalized distribution, with these as average values. So the other input data needed to generate a simulation, making it a data-driven model, were the grid tariff, solar installation cost, wind installation cost, energy generation potential for both wind and solar, and a social discount rate for performing the net present value. Then 4 scenarios were designed. A scenario 0, which is a baseline scenario where no financial incentive is applied. A scenario 1, where the only feed-in tariff was applied. A scenario 2, where only tax incentive was applied. And a scenario 3, where tradable green certificates were applied. And each scenario was tested with 3 values collected from literature. So every scenario was tested on each value for at every scenario run. So following the scenario run tree, we have that each country run for each scenario, and each scenario was run for each value. All of these were run for 500 times. The park itself that was said is a small world park. So they had 50 industries together, between each others, for 20 years, and every period in the simulation, it's equal to 1 year. Then coming to the results that we get, looking over, first comparing the countries, based on energy generation, some highlights were observed. The first one is that every country produced wind energy. Gamma, delta, and zeta didn't produce wind energy at all. Epsilon was the leader in producing energy, producing more energy in wind than it produced in solar. This was a kind of expected due to the high potential of wind energy that was applied to Zeta. Also, it's interesting to see that despite not producing any wind energy, Gamma Zeta produced the highest numbers of energy production in the whole simulation. Going over and looking into the number of communities that were generated within the simulation, it's interesting to see that when feed-in tariff was the applied tax incentives, the least number of communities were created. So feed-in tariff was the financial incentive that less simulated industries to community. Tax and TGC were much better in this sense, surpassing the baseline. Then going deeper into the communities and looking at the number of members that joined as a member, we see that feed-in tariff have produced the less number of communities. Also was the least attractive for industries to join the communities, with an exception to Zeta. Zeta was the outlier over here. And again, tax and TGC, they had better results in the sense than the baseline. Now further looking into the members' exit, so the members joined the community, they got unsatisfied with it and decided to leave. Here, there are no clear indications. There are no. It's not as easy to interpret as the others. But one interesting thing is that Zeta, Delta, and Gamma got a really low number of members not exiting. So for feed-in tariff. So feed-in tariff, despite of not being very attractive in those countries, it was easier for the members not to leave than despite tax, for example. Then finally, the policy entrepreneur role, which was a created metric. Basically, it's telling me if the period was better or worse than the previous period. So if it was better, it was a +1. If it was worse, it was a -1. And here we see a clear indication that communities struggle more with feed-in tariff, as is the only one that we got negative values for 4 countries, and those that got positive values got lower amounts than the others. So this is an indication to the government that the companies struggled more, that the communities struggle more to develop their projects than compared to other financial incentives. Now to the comparison of the incentives itself on the financial aspect of them. We split the evaluation onto evaluating only what was produced by the communities, what was expensed by the communities, and what was expensed by the government. So if we look over only to community investments, how much was spent by the community to generate the energy projects, we see that feed-in tariff was one that cost less for the communities, and tradable green certificate cost much more than the other ones, especially more than the baseline. So the communities here to spend more to generate energy. If we look at the governmental investments, the situation flips. So here we have that tradable green certificate was the scenario where the government expensed the least, and tax was the one where it expended the most. So inverted over a bit the position from what communities have, what communities expense it. And then grouping all together, we calculated the levelized cost of energy, basically dividing how much it cost by how much energy it was produced to generate a fictional tariff of how much it would cost for the communities to buy this energy. Here we see that feed-in tariff produced the highest LCOE. Tradable green certificate was the cheapest one, considering total investments. So it's community investment plus governmental investment. So if we look over the whole, everything that was expensed, tradable green certificate was the cheapest one, feed-in tariff was the highest one, but even so, this is cheaper than the the grid tariff, the normal grid tariff. So producing renewable energies with financial incentive, it's an advantage because it's cheaper than the grid tariff. And comparing only to the total investments, tradable certificate produces the cheapest energy. If we look only for the community investment, then it changes. As tax becomes the cheapest one, feed-in tariff is still the most expensive ones, but again, cheaper than the grid tariff. So leading to the conclusions, the goal was achieved, the model, and was tested for different financial incentives and their capability to promote renewable energy generation into energy communities. The application of financial incentive has demonstrated that it enhances energy production in industrial energy communities, confirming the hypothesis. Not all countries perceive incentives equally. The results are indication that further investigation is needed, especially on this cultural aspect and how it influences the decision process. Scenarios delivered cheaper LCOE than the grid tariff, demonstrating feasibility for renewable energy if well planned. Looking specifically to the incentive, feed-in tariff, the communities with feed-in tariff delivered their worst results. So they had the smallest number of new communities being generated, and they were least attractive to members. They had an overall high costs while delivering a lower generation. They had the smallest community metrics. And this raised the question of why such poor performance, especially because feed-in tariff it's the most supplied financial incentive in the world. So it is believed that the pay-as-you-go scheme has a big help in this sense, as it required a governmental expenditure despite on how much energy is being generated. So every turn, independently if it was increasing the amount of energy being produced, an expense was being made. Also, industries generating energy outside the communities were not measured. So within the decision process, one of the possibilities was that the industry decided to do renewable energy, but decided not to join a community. And since this was not measured, there's a possibility that being outside the community was more advantageous. So we lost track of those such energy generated within the communities. And also simplicity of costs in the model may also have helped to miss something. The CBA process, it's much more complicated than what was designed over here. It involves much more aspects that was not seen as advantageous over here. So with this result, perhaps this assumption was not correct. Tax incentives, they are considered considering only the investment of the communities. Tax incentives communities deliver the best results. So they have low cost for the communities while having a high cost for the government. They had the highest energy generation within the other financial incentives. And they had high community metrics. They were good to generate communities and attract members to them. And tax incentives, they reduced the installation costs while the government renounced the tax. So this is why it had a low cost for the communities, because the implementation costs were lower, and the government expensed much more to do that. Looking to triple green certificates, considering the total investments, communities and the government, TGC communities deliver the best results while having a low cost for the government and putting that cost, the burden cost, into the communities. They produce a high level of energy, and they had high community metrics. But there's the possibility for additional revenue from this carbon bond market of trading such certificates. So going over some reflections and limitations in this research. This research was limited on the certifications it adopted. Some aspects were considered as resolved, such as, for example, if I want to build a windmill, I can build it. There's no physical limitation. There's no bureaucratic limitation around it. The installation costs, they were simplified as well. They came out from the International Renewable Energy Agency, where they provided a range. The physical limitations of where it could be installed or not, this was not observed, and the simplification of economics of CBA, and only so then they were considered. Perhaps other renewable energy sources may yield different results. And for future research, one is understanding feed-in tariff as an incentive for production inside and outside the energy communities to better understand if this happened, and how to make the exchange of tradable green certificates in a way that it doesn't fall into the flaws that the carbon credit market had. And thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Rafael, for your clear presentation. Now we are up to asking some questions, and we expect brilliant answers.
I'll try my best.
Yes, of course, you will try your best. We trained you also a little bit. We teased you a little bit in all meetings before this, which led to this difference. Sina, would you like to start with the question?
Yes, I can do that. Well, thank you so much, Rafael, for your detailed and fluent presentation and for the nice thesis. I think you've already mentioned a lot of very important issues for transitioning to a renewable future, and that was not an easy task. So very well done. And I have some questions also. First of all, is that when you read the thesis, it's kind of reflecting that the biggest focus of this research was on economic feasibility of transitioning in the industrial sector. So why instead of ABM, didn't you use another modeling paradigms like economic models?
Yes, so the use of agent-based modeling was to capture the emergence behavior that industries seeking to do one thing, they could develop more and being within a community. So if we did this only by mathematical formula, we would lose part of this emergence of being together, generating a community, and interacting between other peers can emerge. So if it was only the availability for one industry, that's purely economic. If it is because since we're trying to catch the overall of everything, agent-based modeling showed to be a better approach.
Okay, and my next question is that in the thesis and also in the presentation, you mentioned that the tax incentive turned out to be the most favorable one for communities. But at the same time, we know that the price, it's kind of reflecting that the price of renewable technologies is still so high, and this is causing the potential members to try out for joining such projects. But in the same time, IRENA also on 2019 reported that the price of renewable technology decreased by 83% in only in an 8 years period. But the results of this research was gained by running the model over a 20 years period, and it resulted in tax incentive to be the most favorable one. So do you think that considering these drastic changes in the price of renewable technology could change these results or not?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Price going down, the amount expensed by the government the amount renounced by the government with tax will go down, and the feasibility will increase. So yes. This was something not modeled. So the future of these prices it's a simplification. It's one of the limitations of the research. So, but yes, I do believe that in the future, tax will lose its advantage.
And my last question is that the results of this research is pretty much insightful for the policymakers, of course. But how do you think that these results can be helpful for the for the industrial companies if they want to transition, if they want to have a smoother transition to renewable electricity?
Yes. So the benefit I see this for the communities and industries, it's that it gives them insights on focusing on their specific scenario, putting over their metrics and doing the simulation. They can start to perceive on which type of financial incentives might be the most advantageous. Then this goes into the political arena where the policy analysts need to understand, because then there are a conflict of interest. But at least it gives a bigger insight, a first step into understanding which type of policy should be pursued by the actors that are interested in developing such policy.
You're satisfied, Sina?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then I give the word to Amine.
So thanks, Rafael, for the clear presentation, and also for making such a complex thesis. It's a very complex model, so well done. And I know that you went into a lot of trouble making it. So yeah, I hope you now have, like, you can relax a bit. So I have many questions, but I'll ask 3 questions. One related to the theory, one related to model, and one related to your result. And then if I have time in the next round, I will ask my next questions. So starting from the theory, yeah. So I'm just going to ask you to improvise about something. Actually, I like this. I like you to know what you think about it. So in your model, you're assuming that the agents are cooperative, and they're not really disobeying the rules, and they're just like cooperating as if they're all good people. But we know that there's always conflict, and conflict resolution mechanisms, and sanctioning as well. So I just want you to improvise how, if you had brought this dynamics into the simulation, your results would have changed.
Yes, I think they would. I'm not really sure how much, because the selection of the sexes as the game to be played was made for that, because the better of the sexes believes that if we don't cooperate, we both lose. So cooperation, despite not being optimal, it's better than not cooperating. But I do believe that if more elements of conflict were put over, we will see a bigger number of industries perhaps leaving, or perhaps being interested for them to join. Because if you're dealing by yourself, companies already have their internal conflicts as they are actors of actors. So avoiding more conflict, it's a good deal. And this is perhaps one of the reasons that in real life there are not that many energy communities in the industries. This brings an extra layer of complication.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe they just didn't think about it yet.
Indeed.
So thank you. So that's a clear answer. So what I was missing was that you talk about different decision styles and decision rules, but you don't really do any sensitivity analysis on those. And so I'm just wondering how the different styles and the different rules actually influence your model in the end.
Yes, here in the presentation, I thought it was too much in detail to put over.
But also on your thesis, I also missed this. So this question actually comes from your thesis presentation.
Okay, so on my thesis, it is on the process for deciding to after joining the community if I should stay or if I should leave. The join the community focus on the small world network and on the financial aspect of it. Living the community, it sticks to how I understand this community code, and if I am a member of here, if I feel a member or not. So the metrics, they are divided by the countries, and they were normalized based on the central value for social parameters. And this is a little position. So this position for each industry. So each industry has a value for financial style and a value for decision style and a value for decision rule. So that it has a preference. This preference was modeled into this making a choice. If this happens, do this. If this happens, do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, I still don't see the differences, so that's still a question. But maybe just building on that to make it easier for you to answer. Just take one country you like. I don't care which one. And then try to explain the results you got based on the decision rules and decision that you used.
Okay, so going for Alpha, because Alpha was one
Can
country.
you just use the country name, because
Australia.
Sorry?
Australia.
Yeah, okay.
So Australia, it has on their cultural aspect for their decision style. The decision style is the one that dictates how they behave within a community. So if I prefer to be on a hierarchical command, so if I prefer hierarchies, or if I prefer to have a debate. Australia being a much independent country where people understand that they're independent of each other and they are not so much to bonding onto a collective. Industries over there, they face more struggles to be within the community, and Australia was the country that presented the highest number of members who exited the communities, and started to exit very soon, sooner than was expected. It was expected communities to start living at year 12, but in Australia they started living at year 6, 7. So much sooner than the other places because of this cultural aspect. And this was designed on the evaluations and the value that was attached to each industry. From the distribution, normalized distribution, each industry received one value, and Australian values, they were on the lower end. Being on the lower end, they were more intolerable to differences within the community. So the more heterogeneous the community was, the more unsatisfied the members became. So this led to early leaves. This can also be a point of influence on the amount of energy produced, because at year 6, companies decided to start leaving. This creates a more imbalance.
Okay. So if we just go back to the culture, the collective versus individualist dimension, then I would say, yeah, I mean, so if I'm comparing countries just based on that, then I assume this, yeah, how would the living and staying influence that, or the other results? I'm just looking at this dimension and wondering.
Those dimensions influence the living. So
only.
Sorry?
They only influence the decision to leave?
Yes, they influence their decision to leave within the communities.
Okay, so does that mean if I take the cultural dimensions of host data out, the model is basically indifferent to the dimensions except for the living component?
Yes.
Okay. Then do you think it's even worth including them if it's just included in one dimension?
Yes, I do think it is, because it is over the focus was on improving the communities. So members in the communities and understanding what makes a member of the community to leave, I do think it was important to generate the whole picture.
Yeah, but then if I'm just sticking to the comparison between the different financial incentives, then I will basically get the result for every country. Yeah, for the different countries. If this dimension, I mean, so what I'm saying is that I'm expecting that the reason that you see the differences among the countries is not because you included the cultural dimensions, but because you included the different values for, the actual values related to the energy. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Both of them. Yes, so that's why on the tables I split it over by countries and by financial incentives, because there's a clear difference between the financial incentives on the same country. So this gives one dimension of understanding. Also looking for the financial incentives, comparing different columns gives us different dimension to understand the whole picture.
Yeah, but don't these differences come from the fact that you have different values for feed-in tariffs, energy costs, etc., rather than the dimensions?
Columns, yes. The rows, no. The rows are based on the different incentives.
Okay, I'm lost. Yeah, so what I'm still struggling. It's still not clear to me how having the culture aspects included influences the comparison you made with between the different incentives for the program?
It influenced how the communities would operate, how they were going to generate their value, how they were going to interact, how the members interact influences how the community behaves. This influences how much can be generated. And this is one aspect of influencing that decision. The goal was to perceive how much energy could be generated, having these differences being in place.
Yeah, but you just said that it only influences the leaving of the industries from the community.
Yes, and Australia, being the country that left, has more members left, also presented the worst results in each scenario. For all incentives, Australia was the country that produced less energy in every single one of them. This clearly is an indication that the environment of the community was worse in Australia than compared to the United States, which produced the highest values in all scenarios.
Which you're connecting to the cultural dimensions.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to take this longer, but yeah. If you can ask more questions, and I'll ask infinite questions.
Just to follow up, because I also had this issue quite prominent on my list of questions. Exactly the question is, how important are these cultural dimensions? I consider this as one of the innovative aspects of your thesis, Rafael, and I said that earlier. It's very interesting how you operationalize these aspects, but I still remain with the same kind of questions as Amine just asked you. So how did it influence the results? And if you would, let me ask the question in a different way. Which of these Hofstede dimensions is the most important for decision making? If you reflect from that angle, it's still the same issue as Amine asked.
Okay, yes, I understand and I agree that adding more cultural aspects to the model, it's very beneficial. It could increase the debate and could increase more bringing more to real life the whole model. What was the Hofstede, it came in to aggregate into game theory and the interaction. So the idea was to influence the action arena. How is this going to add more value to the action arena? This was done by mixing sharp theory with this cultural aspect. So claiming one Hofstede dimension to be the most important one, it's hard for me to make that decision because they are intertwined. They were normalized with each other.
Yeah, that's correct. I can follow you, but you also made your thesis an analysis, a sensitivity analysis, next to all factors, analyze how important you refer to different KPIs, like the numbers of members in a community, or the number of communities, or the total produced, or the number of exits. So could you relate these cultural aspects to these KPIs?
Indirectly, yes. And this indirectly relation, it's perceived on the roles. So having different countries produce very different results. Australia and the United States, for me, it's the biggest example, as Australia performed really poor in all scenarios. The United States performed really well in all scenarios, both in the number of communities being there and on the number of members that joined and the numbers of members that exited. So these are community aspects. So this it's related to the cultural aspect of it, but to pinpoint how culture influenced those elements, it was not a work done.
Okay, good. But that the US really outperformed the other example countries is really a little bit counterintuitive, isn't it? The US has very specific individualistic preferences. Everything needs to be documented in laws. It's a low trust society. So in that respect, you would expect countries, European countries like the Netherlands, which is much more a high trust society, much more successful in this respect.
Yes, in those aspects of the community, yes, the Netherlands was better, even better than the US. But the US, analyzing Hofstede's values, the US gave me a different perception on how the country is. I was expecting to see some values with Hofstede's, and Hofstede showed me different values. They are not, culturally, they are not the country that I had before looking to Hofstede's values.
Okay, that's surprising, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it is. It is. It's really the most amazing part of Hofstede was to really understand and take a look to see what metrics are there and compare that to what my knowledge was telling you before.
Okay, just to finish this small discussion, Rafael, have you been able to validate your results in some way with these actual countries, or is this still very much a theoretical exercise?
It's still theoretical. When we had the green light and Sina mentioned that the values were different, and I ran the value, and we chose to shift everything into fictional countries, it's when I got afraid of making an actual comparison, especially because of the simplifications. Then it came to my attention how many simplifications are there and how those simplifications can really change. So
I know I recognize this precisely, and this is very difficult model you developed. So I appreciate that you dare to do it. But what can we learn from this? How can we apply this for reality?
well,
could you reflect on that for me?
Yes, the way I perceive this application in reality is that it is the first step. Gives the bigger insight on how, if I put in the values metrics for my country I'm studying, bringing real life data and trying to be the more precise possible in this aspect, this will give me the first general insight of if I'm going to pursue this as a policy entrepreneur, if I'm going to go after the government into let's develop a policy onto this aspect. This starts to give the first step on what needs to be developed in a policy analysis.
Yeah, okay, good. Some 8 or 9 minutes left, so perhaps we could also ask the audience whether there is someone who would like to ask a question for you. If yes, please unmute your audio and ask the question. No one dares. Caroline, do you dare to ask a question to your husband?
No,
You should do.
Should I?
Yes,
Really?
please do so.
No, I have no questions already learned about. I heard about all of you every day that Rafael talks. It's really nice to meet everybody. And yes, I have discussing this with Rafael every day, and with long conversations. Yes, honey. And also my thesis, we talked a lot because recently I did my PhD defense as well. So yeah, so I think it's a really good exchange that we do every day. We talk every day about research. So it's our life.
That can be very tiresome, isn't it?
She's actually bored of listening to communities and energy development.
Okay.
And I just would like to say thank you to everybody in the committee, and Sina and Amine and Hof. It's really nice to see this and to your help and your support with Rafa. And I don't know if you know Rafa, it's his cute name in our family, so you can call him as well. And yeah, I just like to say congratulations to everybody. It was really nice, and it's
okay.
It's good to, yeah.
Thank
you very much.
Okay, this is very much appreciated. And yes, Rafael had a little bit of a rough fight, but we will reflect on that later on. So no questions, and perhaps that might also be a moment to stop, unless Amine or Sina want to pose another question. No?
That's okay. Yeah, it's good.
Here, I think.
Yeah, I think that's okay.
It's a good moment. It's a good last word of your wife. The
Yes.
last word during your time as a student. So then we finish this. This is an official exam, you know that. So we finish it. We will leave now this meeting, and we will be back shortly with the result of our elaboration, with the mark, with the grade you get for your final exam. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have the link for the final meeting, I think. So use that link, and you might wait also there, and we will be back in 10 or 15 minutes. Okay?
Yes, I'm going to change to the other room already.
Okay, good. Thank you, all of you, also for attending this presentation, and we see you back in some 15 minutes. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Pedir para todo mundo trocar para outra sala agora.
Hey man, how's it going?
Hey, Danny, how are you?
Fine. Too early for me, but anyway. Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
How's everybody else?
Good, Danny. How are you?
Ooh, is it still dark here, man?
It's also dark here, man. It's still the Netherlands, you know.
Hey man, some tough questions they ask you there.
I was also impressed, man. They put you in front of a machine gun and just started shooting at you. I was like, dude, what's happening here?
I mean, it was always tough for questions. This is a constant.
Yeah, it was interesting because when the moment that they asked you how many of the markers of cost data you can actually put in the model, it was like, ouch. That was I was frozen for a moment, thinking, ouch. I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
It didn't think about it either. It didn't try to reduce the model and see if it behaved, if it worked still.
No, the thing is that they want to enhance the cultural aspect of it was the one that they really were impressed of, and they believe that this needs to go further. So they were trying to push that already for a while, but when we started to discuss pushing this for a while, I had already the results. So it didn't make sense to actually change everything and redo. There was no feasible time.
Mm-hmm.
But I was expecting them to ask a lot on Hofstede's values.
Cool.
Yeah. At least it was not surprising. You knew it was coming.
No, I knew. There were no surprise. The questions themselves, they didn't tell me which questions to do, but the topics, I had put pretty clear in my mind what they're going to ask, about what they're going to ask.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see. I also feel that just the mathematical model is not going to be enough, but
No, No, it is enough you're looking over only one country, one specific community or one industry. If you're really focused, then yes, a mathematical model solves everything. But you loses the emergence of the behavior aspect.
Yeah, that's true. Well, let's see what happens. How today? Yeah. Chon, 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 chon.
I have the evaluation assessment form here. I'm gonna grade you.
Please do.
This was fascinating. I booked 2 hours for this, for the whole thing, but it's gonna be 1 hour tops, right?
Now they have about 10 minutes or so. I mean, they are 10 minutes discussing, then they will come back, probably with 10 minutes talking about
the grade. Yeah, okay, 1.5 hours.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, but it was really quick. I mean, for the presentation and the questions was really quick. I think they were really happy with your work. I saw one presentation and the questions were for an hour. I mean, that was like, yeah, everybody was scared at some point.
Oh. Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it
was Ecuador, Danny, right now.
Yes, I'm in Ecuador right now. We're all kind of, at least my family is all under the rug because things are getting out of control here in South America, man.
Yeah.
In every country.
Yeah. I can imagine.
That's all we can see, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, here after 3 months of quarantine, the only thing that we get was losing jobs. I mean, we have more dead people now than at the beginning of the quarantine, but now nobody pays attention. So yeah, good work.
But here also a lot of people lost their jobs, right? They're talking about a 6% retraction of the economy this year.
Wow, it really depends. 6% is what the DNB said. Rabobank calculated 4.5, and some other banks put it 7.9. So it's still very unclear.
And also, unemployment rate rose to 7%. So that's pretty big for him.
Yeah, that was news. I think that I was having some interviews, and I think half of my interviews finish in the middle of the quarantine, and they will tell me, well, we don't know what's going to happen, so we're going to stop the hiring process. So yeah,
makes sense. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it makes sense.
Yes, I was thinking the same.
Yeah.
Hey, Danny.
Stop.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. How's everything going over there?
Yes, everything over there. Where are you, actually?
I'm in Ecuador still. I don't have a camera. It's still dark here.
Poor guy.
Turn the lights on, Danny. Come on, man.
Hey, there's no electricity in Quito.
Come on, I look like a little girl, man.
Yeah, of course, man.
There's no electricity in Quito. That's what you're saying.
Yes, exactly, man. This is connecting just by
Come on, Danny.
There's somebody in the treadmill walking around just to power on this computer, man. You know, renewables.
let us see that pajama, Danny.
Yeah, Danny, come on, man.
Come on, Danny, don't be shy. Come on.
I'm super shy. I mean, have you seen Chewbacca? I'm exactly like Chewbacca right now. My hair is out of control. Yeah, I mean.
Oh, we must see you, man.
I mean, your hair is long. Okay, you can deal with that.
It's worse, you know.
It's finally looking nice, you know.
It's all messy right now.
You live for so long.
I can imagine he found a girlfriend. Yeah. How did she support it? You know.
The only thing that is missing from your look now is the horse, dude.
After quarantine, I'm gonna get a horse.
And the sword, a horse and the sword. But there's a big question: do you share shampoo and conditioner with your girlfriend?
Well, of course, right?
Poor.
Of course.
Ooh, you have a face that you don't buy, dude. I think he's stolen from her.
We don't share the same. How do you call this? Comb. Because her hair is thinner than mine, so I need the thick space tooth, and she needs a brush. If I'm never brushing this, I'll never get the brush out.
Come on. Just cut his hair.
You know the barbers are bad, right? You can donate your hair now.
Oh, right now, no. I'm gonna keep it for a while longer.
Yeah, man. It's finally looking nice. And keep it like this.
And it's healthy. I like it.
It's healthy.
Okay.
Danny, come on, man. Show up. I mean, it's been forever since you last saw you, man.
Don't worry, you're gonna see me. You're gonna see me soon, probably. So don't worry.
So when are you going to Netherlands?
I actually have to report to work on July 15, but I still don't have my return visa, so that may change. But in theory, I have to be there in 2 weeks.
You got hired.
Situation of Corona in Ecuador?
No, I mean, there's nothing here. The problem is that I don't have an embassy here from the Netherlands, so I need to go to Peru, and that's the tricky part.
Okay, the Corona is high, no?
Yeah, they're in huge problems, I guess. I don't know, but I hope that they just ask me to send my passport on mail, and they return my passport on mail. That's it. I hope so, but I still need to wait.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they would send it to you by mail indeed.
I hope so. Let's see what happens. Yeah, I mean, in theory, even Human Resource sent me an email today asking me, what time I'm going to be there on July 15th. And I was, okay, I still need to talk with the manager, so wait a little bit.
Yeah, let's see. I was planning to go to Netherlands in August, but let's see how it will be.
Yeah, I think August is going to be okay.
No, here in Brazil, I don't think so.
It will. Much better than it is for now, at least. Huh? Okay might be a strong word, but for sure won't be that bad. You know.
I mean, I don't know. It's going to be summertime already. There's going to be more people going outside, so I don't know what's going to happen.
But it's actually winter, huh, Danny?
No, but I mean in the Netherlands.
No, in the Netherlands, there's no quarantine anymore, man. At least
I know.
It's already back to normal life.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let's see. I mean, I'm not sure what's going to happen in South America. But yeah, I mean, quarantine is over for most of the countries, and I don't think that it's going to go back. Yeah.
Actually, the quarantine never happened here. The people are going outside, and they don't care.
Okay, that's new one. Even here we stopped. We actually stopped, but nothing changed.
Danny, there's a bar nearby Caroline's house, which is very popular, and it never shut it off. It was always packed.
Wow.
It's really crowded even during the week, because most of people is not working now and doing home office and everything and this kind of things, and they are going out every day. So it doesn't make any sense, because if you are in home office, you have to stay in home. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. But the people are going out every day. Yeah.
Well, I mean, here what we saw is that people actually do the course the first month, and they are starving, so they start to clean out. But yeah, I think that most of those places, like bars and all stuff, are still closed here. But the problem was the problem is that families here live in the same house, so here you see that a lot of families get infected. I mean, you see 15 people infected from the same family living in the same house. So yeah, I mean that's another dimension of problems. But yeah, nothing to do.
So we do think that we are still in a live, in YouTube.
Yep.
Yeah, because Aloysio, my co-supervisor, asked it now. Which bar is that? He said to me, honey, that he cannot enter because the Skype for Business is not working on his computer.
So he's as a guest.
As a guest, yeah, I will send again the link for the, because I sent the first one and then not the second one. So
okay.
Now a nervous moment. Nobody knows what's happening.
If it was real life, in person, probably be getting a coffee while discussing.
Oh, they might be getting a coffee while discussing. They have coffee machines.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. Sorry.
How are they going to mail you the orange thing, dude? I mean, that was part of the incentive of being there. So the
orange.
Diploma. The diploma is always coming in this orange envelope.
It's
the toilet paper too. But orange.
So, and Ike, how it happened with you?
Basically, you just go to the faculty in a scheduled time and you pick it up there.
Okay.
You have to go back to Delft then. Nice.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah. Okay. No, okay, not that bad.
Yeah, it's just a train, and then you just pick it up.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, you have to do it by yourself because you got to sign both the diploma and also like the receipt, So. But if you have no rush to pick it up, I think you can even schedule it for September.
Yeah.
You can have several days available. It's not like you need to pick it up right away.
I'll send an email to them asking on how to.
No, they will send it to you.
It's not dependent on your degree, right?
Yeah. You don't even need to worry about it. They'll send an email to you.
No, but I do have some word about it. I need the diploma quite quick.
No, but you don't need it. Basically, what you can do is to ask for a letter saying that you graduated, And these they send you by email. They send it in one day.
I think this is the easy way to do it. They can send to you anyway because they have all of this in the website or in the.
They just send you a letter saying that you completed your course and it has the same value as the official diploma,
You don't need the diploma right now.
Yeah.
I'll message them and ask about it.
Yeah, these I think they do it. You gotta send the email, of course, asking for the letter, but I think they do it in the same day or maybe the day after, so it's quite fast.
Okay.
Yeah, like here in the university, we do this. But the diploma here in Brazil, it's like a year, something like this, to get ready.
A year?
Dude, they're
mine in the graduation. I didn't see the day. It was there when I went there.
To be honest, it's a bit more fancy than the one we get here, The diploma here, seriously, man, you have to show it around. It seems a fake one.
Really?
Yes, it seems very fake.
It's a special paper or something like.
It's like an A4 paper printed in both sides, so basically you can see the back of it in the front. And if you sort of fumble it, you might actually crush it.
No, we are back.
Hey.
Oh, hi.
Oh.
So stop your private secret conversation.
Yeah.
Now it gets official.
Yeah.
Again, let's see.
So I came into a room and there was Rafael and Caroline. I just felt that I've entered their bedrooms.
Okay, so now we will start with the last. Where's Rafael? I don't see your video, Rafael.
I am here. Not sure if I needed to speak to show up.
I can.
Yes, there you are in your suit with. So that's very, very official. That's good. So this is the last official part. Rafael, Amine will reveal the grade, and will also tell you how we came to the grade, and will tell some nice words, as Sina also will do. And then afterwards, I will close this final step in your career as a student in Delft. Okay, Amine, the floor is yours.
So, Rafael, do you want me to just give away the grade first? Kill you and then get away with, or just like increase the momentum?
Up to you.
Okay, let's just start from the beginning then. So, it's the funny part about Rafael is that he came to me, I don't know, years ago. I feel that you've been there forever, and the reason for that is because you came to me with a huge interest in finance, and you wanted to do a model in finance, and I have no clue what finance is whatsoever. But I just have the difficulty to say no to everyone, so I just said yes to supervise you. But then you had a second supervisor, and that supervisor just, I don't know, vanished at some point.
Yes.
And then we had to think of a new project. So it's just been a very long journey, and that's why I feel that I've known you for a very long time. And it's always been very nice to have meetings with you, because you always try to be very accurate about the responses you give me from the very beginning. And when I try to impose a new project on you, because you were looking for a project, I just try to consider this financial aspect, because in your explanations you always, you showed your passion, so we somehow try to connect finance to Sina's thesis so that both of you are happy and could work together. So that's your marriage at the start. So it's been a very long but also a very interesting thesis. We were just discussing with Rolf and Sina how remarkable it is to be connecting so many theories together at the same time. It's very complex to be able to actually just link them from a theoretical perspective, but also put them in a model. So at two levels you've done very complex things, which are very impressive. And it also links back to your interest and the fact that you're very motivated and persistent. So I just heard from Sina that you actually even tried to contact Sharf to get his point of view at some point. So that just shows your persistence. Yeah, it was very impressive, and I think it's the main reason why you have such a comprehensive and complex model as a result of your thesis. So just looking at it from a model perspective, we were very proud of the model. It's very high quality. On the theoretical part, I also think it's high quality work. But there are also downsides, and the main one being that you had some extra months because of the hurdles you had in your private life, and therefore you had to extend your thesis, which is understandable, and you have good arguments for it. But then, to be fair to all the other students, it also influences your group. Another thing that we kind of missed or would have liked to see more was more in-depth interpretation of the result. On the front part, you've just done a great job connecting the different theories and putting them into the model. But to really interpret and analyze the results that you got, I would have really liked to see how you would link them back to the theories that you connected in the first place, just to be able to explain the underlying mechanisms that led to those results, which made us wondering what would be a fair grade for you. You definitely have a higher than average grade, so that's why we decided to give you a 7.5. To be grateful for the work that you've done, but also to consider the fact that you've had some extra time that students with work that you don't have. So we hope you lots of success, and hopefully you can see Caroline soon. So I don't know how the situation of Corona is in Brazil, but hopefully you can see each other and the airplanes are up and running soon.
Yes,
yeah. And all three of us wish you lots of success. Sina, do you want to add something to this?
Yes. Well, now we just were discussing with Rolf and Emine about how big a model you just created, and then I said that for a person who is not a computer science is a very difficult thing, which not every student dares to do. So in this aspect, I think that's you are so enthusiastic because I was working with you with on a more regular basis than I saw you are always keeping your promises when you wanted to send me some report, even when it's too late at night. So I really appreciate this level of enthusiasm. And I also want to thank your wife because I know that you two were for each other, and this during these challenging times, this is not an easy task. And in these aspects, I also think that you are also lucky, Rafael. And yes, I also agree with 7.5 because you also had a little bit more time. So yes, and I wish you great success in the next chapters of your life.
Thank you very much, Sina.
Thank you, Sina. So some last congratulations also from me as chairman. So we had the least contact with compared to the other two committee members, Rafael. But I think at a certain point I also did send you an email, isn't it? When shortly before the first green light meeting, you really had a very difficult time, and I haven't heard from you for quite some time. I think I sent an email, can't remember precisely. But you came back and we had quite some very deep discussions, and you were really able to cope with this and to come up with the results that you presented today. And I really want to congratulate for this, and also for the personal resistance you had to finish this in a proper way under these circumstances. And this is really something you can be proud of. So congratulations, and also congratulations to your wife and your family, and we wish you all the best, and please stay in contact with us. We always appreciate that a lot, to hear from our past students how they are doing in the real world, and if there are possibilities for collaboration, we are always very much willing to consider that. So congratulations.
Thank you. There is already the conferences that Amina proposed. Me and Sina, we are starting to work on it, on how to present something at the conferences. So yes, I will be in touch for that. And I really would like to thank you all for all the effort and all the help you gave me during this period. I know I lacked in some areas. I completely agree with the lower grade due to the extended period. But your collaboration into making me think about it and really go after, okay, what do I need to research, what do I need to understand, what do I need to present, it was crucial. Without your help, definitely I wouldn't be able to do it by myself, this thesis. So thank you very much for all your help.
Okay, and now we have time to celebrate. Please do so. And yes, hope you see your wife soon again and you are back with your family. Okay?
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Hey.
Parabéns!
Hey.
Acabou! Entra!
Cerveja!
Rafael.
Danny, you should start to speak in Portuguese right now.
Yeah.
I've been practicing.
Ele entende português, não fala de preguiça.
Entende tudo. É.
Ô, Rafa, parabéns, cara.
Parabéns, amor.
Nossa, bicho. Finalmente nós completamos esse ciclo aí. Foi um ciclo longo demais, cara. Nossa, você tá doido. Mas agora, relaxar.
Sim, com certeza.
Parabéns, amor.
Obrigado,
feliz. Amor. Meu orgulho.
Parabéns.
E aí, vão sair?
Não, hoje não. A gente vai
encontrar hoje, mas não deu certo.
Não, daí fica pro sábado. Sábado a gente comemora comemora do Henrique, faz um negócio ajeitado.
Tá bom. Eu ia criar um link no GIF, o que você acha?
Vamos passar por Jits.
Para passar para toda a família, daí quem quiser entra também. Aí eu vou. Você quer criar ou eu crio?
Se você quiser criar.
Eu crio aqui, então tá bom.
Tá bom.
Divulga aí no WhatsApp, então. Beijão.
Até daqui a pouco.
Até já.
Falou. Até já, Jonas.
Fernandão? Acho que agora dá para parar a gravação. Aí a gente entra no Jitsi e conversa lá.
Okay, man. Then I think I will see you later. Congrats.
All right. Thanks. We are going to join into a Jitsi meeting. If you want to join, because then we can have more people connected.
Okay, yeah. Send me the link and then I will join. Don't worry.
All right. Cheers.
Okay. Cheers.
Então tá. A Carol vai mandar o link do Jitsi.
Olá, sogro! Tudo bom? E aí, deu certo a sua inscrição? Uia! Agora estamos preparados para os netinhos. Só o corona dos netinhos, agora é só o corona deixar. E aí, o mestre? Esperar o Rafa entrar. A minha conexão está bem ruim hoje.
Estamos aí. E aí, doutor? E aí, mestre?
Amor!
E aí, doutor? E aí, amor?
Tá vendo? Tirar a câmera. Alguém está me ouvindo?
Sim.
Achei que a internet estava meio ruim.
E aí, Mauro?
Conexão, acho.
Acho que sim. Uf.
Amor, aliviado?
Agora sim.
Ó, a Miné perguntou um monte de coisa para você.
Ela perguntou. Mas ela sempre perguntou. Mas ela sempre fez assim. Toda reunião que tinha com ela é uma característica dela. Ela não lembra direito o ponto exato que ela falou com você, mas ela consegue entender o todo. Daí, volta e meia, ela levanta a mesma pergunta várias vezes. E essa parte da cultura é algo que ela levantou bastante em várias reuniões. Então, eu já estava imaginando que ela ia soltar uma dessa.
E é um instigante, responde, ela ainda vai pra cima de novo.
Cara, o teu som tá péssimo, cara.
Mas foi bom demais.
Ah, que bom. Mas teu som tá horrível.
Meu som tá ruim? Vou botar aqui. Tá dando chiado aí também? Tá dando chiado aí também?
Não.
Deixa o cara do computador do pai do Rafa, não? Do processador.
Ah, sim. É a fonte.
Ufa! Ufa!
Ufa! Depois eu tiro, tá de boa.
Ufa!
Ufa! Ufa!
Né? E aí, amor?
E aí?
O Rô queria que eu falasse, né?
Sim, eu te falei. Que no único momento que eu falei que você era alemã, deu interesse.
Não por causa disso. Acho que ele queria que eu falasse, mas foi engraçado.
Ele estava curioso. Como todo alemão é curioso.
Ele é que é o alemão.
Ah, é?
Então.
Eu não sou curiosa. Desde quando que eu sou curiosa? Eu? Você que é o curioso. Eu curiosa. Ah, tá. Uhum. Né? Nem vem, você é mais curioso, não é?
Sim.
Ah, então tá bom. Não, porque você é outras coisas, né? Curiosa não. E aí? Eu teve uma parte da reunião que caiu minha conexão. Na verdade, minha conexão acho que não está muito boa. Mas...
Sim.
Aí eles falaram o quê? Que você estava aprovado?
Sim, 7,5.
Essa parte que eu perdi. Daí eu só peguei a Miné falando. Daí já.
Não, isso foi ela que falou.
Ela que falou. Não, eu peguei a parte dela falando da nota. 7,5, uma coisa assim.
Ela não falou você está aprovada. Ela falou que a minha nota é 7,5.
Ah, tá. Então tá. Então, porque eu saí rapidão e entrei rapidão, porque não sei por que o Skype cai bastante para min. Não sei o que acontece.
É porque o Skype é ruim mesmo.
Acho que
todo mundo.
A verdade é essa.
Mas o Rolf queria fazer por Skype, né? Não tinha o que discutir. Ele que falou, vai ser por Skype, então tá bom, vai ser por Skype.
Mas aí ali no final ele falou assim, alguém tem alguma pergunta, né? O que eu ia perguntar da sua dissertação? Já sei tudo dela, pô. Aí eu pensei, não, eu até gostaria de falar, mas uma pergunta eu não tenho, né? Tudo bem. Aí ele falou se eu não queria falar, daí então tá bom, falar sim. Agora a pergunta não.
Sim.
Engraçado. Engraçado. Aí eu ia falar pra gente tomar uns drinks, mas daí achei que é demais, eu não conheço eles. Pra falar, não, se eu não chegar na Holanda, a gente vai tomar uns drinks.
Com o filho é fácil de achar ele para tomar uns drinks.
O Rolf não é fácil de achar ele também?
Não, o Rolf ele já tá. Ele é decano, né? Tá para se aposentar. Ele quase não vê.
Mas ele tem uma sala lá.
Aqui lá na casa dele.
Não, ele tem uma sala lá na TU, né? Deve ter um office lá.
Tem.
A gente chega com a cerveja daí, amor.
Ah, tá bom, pode deixar. Fechou.
Ei! Que horas estão aí?
Aqui são 3h30.
Já almoçaram?
Quase na hora de jantar.
Amém.
Ô, meninas, quando que a Mari vai para aí?
Espero que em breve. Não sei ainda.
Ela não foi esse ano ainda.
Não, esse ano não.
Nossa, tá foda, né?
Pô, ainda mais agora, né? Que o euro estourou, pô. Ficou caro.
Eu não passei o link pro Cindy. Na verdade, eu não tenho o telefone dele.
Eu passei.
Eu mandei para ele aqui também.
Ah, tá.
Ele falou que já tá entrando.
Ah, já tá. É o já dele, né? Daqui uma hora, né?
É aquele. Aparece daqui a pouco.
Daqui a
Quando
pouco
a
a
gente
gente
vai
fica
saindo,
esperando
aparece.
umas 2 horas a pessoa arrumar o cabelo dele, passar creme.
Ele mentiu para mim aqui que tinha que trabalhar.
Deve ter mesmo. Ó, Rafael, você não tem cerveja, não? Eu vou abrir uma aqui em sua comemoração.
Isso aí.
Vamos lá.
Espera aí que eu vou pegar.
Abre aí, amor.
Pegar.
Eu tenho uma corona aqui, serve?
Corona aí?
Sogro. Oi, sogro. Tudo bem com você, sogro lindo? Que bom que deu certo a transmissão, né?
Você não tinha parado?
Vamos parar.
A apresentação? Você não tinha parado no YouTube? Não. Sim.
Sim, né? Tchau, turma.
Tchau, turma.
Hey!
Ei, tchau, Lu.
Tchau, Lu.
Parabéns, lindão! Show de bola!
Obrigado.
Pô, mas não tinha nenhum carequinha para te encher o saco, foi?
A história do carequinha fez o maior sucesso. Sucesso total.